Okay, I just demonstrated the scanning process when Spring Boot is running up to find out all the RPC methods in the project, right? And these RPC methods are going to be maintained and saved in two maps. Okay, but we have a problem here. We cannot in here. It's not the right way to do. Yeah, we shouldn't hard code the value here. Instead, we want to retrieve the value from the custom annotation when at Spring Startup and inject the value into this object. Well, let's look at that. We created a custom annotation somewhere, which is called enable RPC client, and we put this annotation on the application class, Spring application class, and we define the values of the client ID and base package here, and we want to retrieve these values and dynamically inject into the RPC client when Spring Boot starts. Okay, so can we do this? Yes, Spring Boot gives you a very powerful interface to do so. Well, let's go back to the project. First of all, I need to create a class called RpcClient Now, Spring Boot gives you a class called, we need to implement it, called ImportBeanDefinitionRegistrar. And you need to implement a method called register_BeanDefinition. So in this method, okay, we can do what we want. Now, what is this interface? ImportBeanDefinitionRegistrar is a Spring interface that gives you the full control over registering bean definitions programmatically into Spring container during the startup phase. So that means it allows you to manually define and register beans instead of relying only on the annotations like component, like bean, and configuration. So we are not using, because we are not using this component, right, and bean and configuration here, right? None of this can retrieve the value of the annotation, right? So we want to retrieve the values of client ID and base package defined in the annotation. The annotation is called enabled RPC client. Yeah, we want to retrieve the values of the client ID and base package, and then we dynamically inject these two values into the RPC, inject these values into RPC client on Spring Boot startup. Okay, so what we're doing is we need to get the value from the annotation, right? So generally, you can use the ImportBeanDefinitionRegistrar. You can register. Let me summarize it first. Any class as a Spring Bean dynamically. Now, because why? Look at that. You have a bean definition registry here. So this bean definition registry, you can register any bean definition. You can register any bean definition in this phase. Okay. So usually, what else? You can scan a package as well. Usually, if you want to scan a package, scan packages for custom interfaces or annotations. So if you want to scan a package, we usually use this way. So create a class which implements the ImportBeanDefinitionRegistrar, and then the reason is this import class metadata, you can get all we need from the annotation. So from here, from the import class metadata, it's actually these params, they get all the metadata of the annotation into it. So you can retrieve all the annotation metadata from this param. All right. And now I'll demonstrate it to you later when we finish the explanation here. So there's one more thing. Import bean definition. We usually working with import. Okay, because the reason is import bean definition registrar implements it are not a component itself. So which means we want to put it into the sprint. When sprint sees the import annotation, okay, and inside this import, we import this class that we are customizing right now. So when the sprint sees this import annotation, it checks if the imported class implements one of the special. Now, Spring have some special checking process, callback interfaces. So, like two, okay, import selector interface or import bean definition registrar. So if Spring scan it and realize that this class, the class that you put into the import annotation implements one of these interface, then if it does, Spring executes that logic during the bean definition phase before any bean are created. So which means this logic is run, it's called before the bean created, before any beans are created. So which means at this stage you cannot get any bean out of the application, because this process is run and called before the beans are created. So what we can do is that we can register bean definition into Spring. Okay, so we use this way to manually register bean definition into Spring. Okay, so let me demonstrate how we can do it. First of all, in here, I said that the first thing is that we need to get the values from the annotation. We need to get the client ID and base package. We need to extract these two values from the annotation. So easy. So importing class metadata here. Then first of all, you can get annotation attributes. All right, so you give the annotation name, which is called enable RpcClient. Right, this name, give a name which is a string. It accepts a string of the annotation name. That's a full name. Okay, full class path name. So you call this method to get the name of the enable RpcClient, and then once you do it, you can get this map. It contains all the values we want. So we want to get the values out, and the key is the value name. The key is the name of the value. So the key is the value that it's the, let me check the name, the field name. So the key is the field name, client ID, base packages. Okay, so what we are gonna do is we get the field name, it's called client ID, and then we can cast it to string. This client ID, and we cast it to string. Okay, the other one it's called annotation attribute get. It's called base packages. Is it called base packages? Yes, base packages. So we put it here, and then we cast it to string array. Now we get two values, base packages and client ID. Okay, so when we get these two values out of the annotation, the next step is we want to inject these two values in the RPC, but we haven't had any RPC bean register, right? So how can we manually register the Spring definition into Spring? Now, it's easy. So let's check. The first step is we need to check if the client ID is null. If it is null, if it is not null, and the base package is not null, so we need these two values. If any of them is null, then we don't do the following process, right? So now we need to create a bean definition for RPC client. Now there's an easier way. Spring gives you a tool called bean definition builder. There's a static method, generic bean definition, and then you give them the class you want, RPC client. Then since you RPC client, then the class you give it to it, you pass into it, it can create a bean definition builder for you. And in this builder, of course, you can just simply call builder.get bean definition, and then you get the bean definition. And then lastly, we can register bean definition into Spring. So registry, use this one, bean definition registry, the dot register bean definition, and the bean definition, register bean definition, you need to give a bean definition, the bean name. The bean name should be RPC client. Okay, I hard coded it. And of course, you should do something easier that you can manage this name. But now I'm hard coding. But yeah, I just want to demonstrate the entire process. So this one you can make some change or make a better way that how you deal with that. Okay. So now I register this bean definition, and this bean definition is the RPC client. So once this bean definition is registered into Spring, and later on, when the beans are created, the RPC client bean instance is going to be created. Okay. So, but remember, I got these two values. I need to inject the values into the RPC client, so we can use the bean definition builder to do it. So builder, if you want to add property value, so the property value, the key, it's the field name. So which field name you want to inject? This one, client ID. So you pass it as the key. The value is the value we extracted from the annotation. So another one, is it base packages? Now this is called scan package. I delete this code, this line. Okay, so now this field is called scan package. Make sure you don't make it wrong. Okay, so scan package. So the value is the base package. Right, so also remember, do one more thing just in case, set that as a singleton. Set scope. So the scope is singleton. It default to be singleton. I mean, I just demonstrate you that we can call many setting here and set lazy init false. I don't want to lazy init. So not lazy init. So we want to initialize it as long as the Spring Boot is running up. Okay. Okay. So we've done this register bean definition, and remember the next step is we need to modify the annotation here. Now, before we manually import this RPC client, now we need to change it to RPC Client Registrar. Okay, and now when you import this class and Spring check, this class is the implementation of import bean definition, and then Spring will deal with this logic and call this register bean definition before the beans are created, and then it gives you a chance. It gives you a chance to manually register bean definition in early phase. Okay, so this is the reason we use the import bean definition registrar interface. It's very useful, and remember we usually use it with the import annotation. So if we have something like this, usually we use that in annotation. We use this import annotation to import this class into Spring. Okay. All right. So the next step is we are going to test the code, and we demonstrate the entire process and see if it can work.